Hello and welcome to the June edition of the HbbTV webinar series. And this time we're crossing the ocean over to the US to see what's going on in the American next generation TV market with ATSC 3. Lots of interesting applications, services, and of course solutions to be discovered over there. And of course, very interesting to see and compare them with the European developments. And that's what we're going to do with great experts that we have today in this June webinar. And I'd like to remind you that this is also our anniversary because we started the HbbTV webinar series exactly 1 year ago. What's on in the US is our focus today, and I'd like to introduce Madeleine Noland, the president of ATSC, who's going to hold the opening speech. Hi, Madeleine.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon.
Wherever you are, this is international. There's also Sam Matheny, who's the CTO of NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters in the US. Hi, Sam.
Hi, how are you? Great to be with you today.
Thanks for joining us. There's also Mike Kralec, Vice President, Technical Operations and Deputy CTO of Sinclair Television Group. Hi, Mike.
Hello, everyone.
And then over to Italy, we've got Francesco Moretti, who's the Deputy Group CEO and CEO International Fincons Group. Hi, Francesco.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here.
And also from Fincons, we've got Oliver Botti, Strategic Marketing and Innovation Executive Director. Hi, Oliver.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks, Oliver. And Fincons is also the co-host of this event, so thanks for organizing this for all of us. This will be a great 1-hour session, and I'd like to remind you that, as usual, this is live, of course, so there's an opportunity to submit your questions. And in the last 15 minutes, we will have the opportunity to discuss them. So let's see what's coming in. Don't hesitate typing in your questions into the chat box, and anything that's of general relevance we'll discuss later on. We'll start with the presentation, and then it's a round table for all of us. So this is a bit of a different setup than we have usually, and this will be quite interactive and quite interesting. And I'm sure we'll get lots of insights from these top experts from the US and be able to draw lots of interesting conclusions. What's going on over here in Europe if you compare it with the US, and maybe see how we can make some progress. Let's get over to Madeleine now, who's going to have the opening speech and show her presentation.
Okay, can you see the presentation and hear me okay?
Thank you, it's working well.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks very much for having me. My name is Madeleine Noland. I'm president of Advanced Television Systems Committee. And the latest project coming out of ATSC is NextGen TV, or ATSC 3.0, which follows closely on the heels of DVB-T2 and is kind of similar to a combination of DVB-T2 plus HbbTV. So I'll get into this a little bit, but mainly I want to give you an update on what's happening with this system, particularly in the US, and talk a little bit about how our counterparts across the ocean, we can all work together to move things forward. A quick overview of ATSC. We are a standards development organization, kind of similar to DVB and others in the world. We're coming up on our 40th anniversary, and it's an open due process organization like other SDOs, and we have about 145 members now, which really span the ecosystem and the globe of this international organization. As I mentioned, our latest project has been ATSC 3.0. It was launched commercially in South Korea in May of 2017 and is being launched commercially in the US as of now, with the first launches happening in 2019 and 2020. So a little bit about ATSC 3.0. There are some key advancements, which again will probably look familiar to those who are familiar with DVB-T2. First of all is the physical layer, which is flexible and configurable. Right now, it's the world's most efficient one-to-many DTT system, right up there with DVB-T2. The transport layer differs from DVB-T2 in that it's based on Internet Protocol, and we're using MMTP and root dash as the packaging system over the IP-based transport layer. With the video, again, this probably looks very similar. It's H.265. allowing UHD, HDR, wide color gamut, high frame rate, and we're also using scalable video coding. On the audio side, which is testing extremely well with consumers, we have the immersive audio plus personalization, and there are 2 systems specified, Dolby AC4 MPEG-H audio. And the other thing that seems to be testing really well with consumers is this concept of voice plus or dialogue boost, where you can make the dialogue louder relative to the music and effects so that people can understand what's being said more easily. For applications, which is why we're all here today, we have web-based interactivity using the W3C tools. We refer to the wave snapshot of the W3C tools, and they are HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript at their heart. And we also have defined some WebSocket APIs, which help us manage the television-specific features that the W3C doesn't identify. And I'll get into that in a small way. I'm going to leave the technical stuff to some of the other panelists, where I think we're going to get more in depth there. We also have better accessibility, some of which is also driven by the application layer. One of the things about the web-based interactivity of ATSC is that we're using it for a number of different use cases, not just interactive for the audience with the program, like voting and polling, but it's also a key element of dynamic ad insertion, similar to HbbTV TA. And it's also a key part in some cases for accessibility, and also in some cases for the advanced emergency messaging system. So the interactive app piece is actually a very powerful and strong piece that's going to be used in many different ways. For accessibility, we have new capabilities for the visual and hearing impaired audience members, and we also have advanced emergency messaging, which again can be the advanced emergency messaging information in the bitstream can be consumed by a broadcaster app and presented to the viewer using the broadcaster's application user interface. So again, that application interactive piece is going to be key across many of the features of NextGen TV. There is the ability to do data casting, which is the ability to deliver any kind of data to the Internet of Things. That's kind of one of the benefits, I think, of having an IP-based broadcast system. So in terms of the receiving end, you can do cars, smart agriculture, smart cities, digital signage, whatever you can imagine might need a one-to-many data dump could be a good candidate for data casting over the broadcast system. And lastly, we see this system as being convergence ready, where it could potentially be convergent with other IP delivery networks such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 5G, etc. A little bit about where we're at with the deployment. In South Korea, about 70% of the population is now able to get UHD broadcasts over the air using ATSC 3.0. As I mentioned, they've been at it since 2017 with their main goal of getting it on the air by February 2018, which is when the Winter Olympics were held in Pyeongchang. In the US, we're also making progress. We have about 62 markets which are considered to be the sort of first markets that have announced that they will go to ATSC 3.0. In the US, all of these designated market areas, there are 210 of them, and they are ranked according to how many people or how many households are in each DMA. And they're all centered around a major city or one or two major cities. In this case, 62 of those 210 markets have announced that they will launch ATSC 3.0. And among those 62 are the top 40 ranked markets. And so even though 62 doesn't seem like a large number relative to 210, because the top 40 are in that group, we're actually going to be reaching about 75% of the population when those 62 markets have launched. In fact, the number is higher than 62 now because some of the markets launched that we were surprised about, that we hadn't heard were on the initial 62 list. But we're well on our way with that, and the expectation is that by early 2022, all of these markets will launch, and we will have roughly, as I mentioned, 75% of the population viewing ATSC 3.0. You can follow the progress at the ATSC website under Spotlight ATSC 3.0 deployments. So what's happening in the device market? We have actually television shipments going on in the US, as well as in South Korea, as you can imagine. And this is some estimates that were put forth by the Consumer Technology Association that came out in January of this year, where they reported about 300,000 NextGen TV capable sets were sold in 2020, and their prediction is that roughly 24.6 million next-gen capable television sets will be in the marketplace by 2024 in the US. There are early signs that these numbers are quite conservative. It's entirely possible that we are going to exceed these numbers, and the CTA plans to continually update its estimates. I'd like to talk a little bit about digital terrestrial broadcasting in the global digital network ecosystem. So where we are DTT broadcasters, we have to envision and understand that we are operating in this global ecosystem of many data delivery networks. And I think HbbTV with the hybrid concept has kind of been at the forefront of that. But even it's very, very broad. So we think about data session, steering, switching, and sharing across heterogeneous networks that can improve spectrum usage efficiency as well as the user experience. So next-gen DTT systems like ATSC 3.0, DVB-T2, and HbbTV as part of that are currently the most efficient physical layers for one-to-many data delivery in the world. And they work for both TV and non-TV uses. They work for fixed and mobile usage, and they can be leveraged to converge with other data delivery networks in these hybrid type scenarios. And this can include the internet, LTE, 5G, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, etc., as I mentioned. So one of the things that I think is going to be important going forward is to think about convergence among the 4 DTT technologies, including the ISDB system, the Chinese system, the European system, and the US system, where there can be convergence with other networks, which might be not only valuable, but potentially necessary for the broadcasting ecosystem going forward. So thinking about this convergence among the DTT technologies, in the ATSC, members believe that the global DTT convergence is a very, very valuable goal. And the idea is to seek and respond to opportunities for convergence. The expectation is not that anyone is going to turn off any of their systems. There's a lot of momentum behind each of the 4 systems, lots of infrastructure in place, lots of capital has been spent. That said, where there are opportunities for convergence between the systems, we think it's important to explore those opportunities and take advantage of as many as we can. And looking at ATSC 3.0's interactive system and the HbbTV system, we see that there's a lot in common. Both have that technical background, which is a backbone, which is aligned with the W3C technologies. We also both had to add some TV-specific features, for example, allowing people to change the channel or asking the television set if captions is turned on, these kinds of things that the World Wide Web Consortium doesn't need to worry about, but the TV folks do. Each of these organizations has added those capabilities to their systems. In the case of ATSC 3.0, we used WebSocket APIs to accommodate those features. And we understand HbbTV's technology is a little bit different under the hood, but nonetheless trying to achieve the same goals. A344 is the specification in the ATSC 3.0 suite of standards, which specifies the interactive system, and it is available for the low price of free at the website at the link that's shown there. But regardless of the technology behind the user experience, the viewers know what they like and they know what they don't. And one of the things that's been incredibly impressive about HbbTV is the amount of traction that's been taking place among viewers with features that are enabled by the HbbTV system. And one of the things that I think that we want to hopefully learn from you and potentially from one another as time goes on is what is working and what is not working in terms of the user experiences. And what happens under the hood, well, we let Fincons and others worry about that. But what people like, I think that's an area that we can share a lot. So with that, I'd like to pass it on to the roundtable and look forward to insights from our other panelists, and I look forward to all of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting overview, comparison of the different markets and systems, and of course, interesting conclusions to see that all these different associations, whether it's HbbTV in Europe, ATC in the US, and the others, are kind of facing the same challenges at the moment. And of course, in that situation, it makes more sense than ever to collaborate and jointly work on resolving these issues. Have I concluded that correctly, Madeleine?
100%.
Thank you. So that's something I learned from your presentation. It's always good when you learn new things. And Further issues are now, including technical ones, to be discussed in our round table. So thanks for joining us, and I'd like to welcome you all back. And we now have about half an hour for the presentation and 15 minutes afterwards for your questions. So please, I'd like to remind you, do submit them through the chat box, and we will address them a bit later on. Now let's start with you, Sam, because you've got kind of an overview at NAB, and I'd like to focus on your activities with ATSC, as you've promoted and supported ATSC since the very beginning. I think thereby, of course, helping US broadcasters to highlight the potentials of NextGen TV, as you call it, and to accelerate the overall adoption process. And would you like to summarize all these steps for us so that we're all kind of familiar with your activities?
Yes, of course. Well, maybe I won't go through every step, but I will talk about some of the highlights. Of course, NAB stands for the National Association of Broadcasters, and we really work on behalf of our members and with our members inside the ATSC and also with our partners at the Consumer Technology Association. I think the role that we have really been able to play is one to contribute to the standard itself. Even back before I was with NAB, I was with one of our member organizations, and while there I served as chairman of the specialist group on NextGen TV that helped come up with some of the use cases that we're actually seeing materialize now. But at the NAB, what we try to do is we leverage our NAB show and now our online platform, NAB Amplify, as places that we can share some of the concepts that our members are interested in doing. And one of the things that we've been really excited about is how creative that they have been. And I'm going to share in a minute just some of the applications that are prototypes that have been developed over the years. But I do also want to emphasize our work with the Consumer Technology Association. We hosted a test station in Cleveland for a number of years there, where we would bring in interops and we would have the entire sort of ecosystem from the professional equipment manufacturers all the way through to broadcasters and developers, and then ultimately the consumer electronics companies, where we would test the systems end to end, and that includes the interactive applications. And we also developed even an early prototype framework that folks use to test some of the WebSocket APIs and to make sure that things were rendering properly. So we've been involved very much from a technical perspective, and then more lately we've really been involved with a lot of demos, and we again try to highlight those at our NAB show, where we can really have a much wider audience that gets into the business people. So I'm going to run real quickly through some of those applications, and these really go back to 2016. WREL, which is a very innovative station that I used to work at, and with they hosted an event along with NBC where we had an application that was based on the Olympics. We worked with Fox. They obviously do a lot of sports. This was a multi-camera sort of application that they developed that was both for football, I should say American football, and NASCAR racing. Again, WREL had a weather-centric application. News Press and Gazette had an on-demand news application. Home Shopping Network had an application where you could shop. But more recently, and I'll focus on these a little bit, more recently in Fincons, I want to give a shout out to them because they've been very instrumental in the development of these apps. But this is an application that was on our NAB Show Express last year that really was developed for a segment of network programming, so CBS. This is programming from CBS, and this is their Saturday morning news show. It's called The Dish, and you can see in the bottom corner there's a carousel that you can rotate through. This one is focused on shopping, but there were lots of other elements to that. This is one that we just did on NAB Amplify earlier this year. This is done with Scripps, another network member now. So a major broadcaster across the US, and this is focused on news literacy. And here's an example of what it might look like really integrated into the broadcast. And then we've got another screen grab that is more like, okay, I've decided I want to really dive into the application. All of these are using, you know, the HTML5, the CSS, the JavaScript, the WebSocket APIs that Madeleine was talking about earlier, and then, as I said, Fincons has been a wonderful development partner. And then this one is a sort of a sneak peek at something that'll be on NAB Amplify on June 24th, if you want to look at that. And this one's really focused on data casting, and this is done in partnership with Howard University, and is about creating educational equity and helping people that don't have broadband access maintain their access to educational content from their school. And so this is one that we're really excited about, and we'll be showcasing on the 24th. So those are just some examples of what our members are doing and what we're doing alongside with them and with partners like Fincons. So I will stop sharing now, and that's hopefully gives you a good flavor of what we're doing.
Definitely. Thank you for these examples. Always good to see a bit of visualize things than just talking about them. We'll also have a video later on, I can already tell you. And you can see some of these things then in video and audio mode. And it's also interesting to see from your presentation that the big players are using ATSC 3. And one of these big broadcast groups is here with us, Mike from Sinclair. And we know that Sinclair is investing a lot in ATSC 3, and we can be considered as one of the drivers in the US market behind it. And would you like to summarize the strategy behind these moves for us, Mike?
Sure, thanks. So Sinclair's kind of got, I'll say, two paths, right? We recognize that the scale may not necessarily be there at this point. So we've got a path towards sort of preparing ourselves for the future. What does that mean around data distribution, position, navigation, timing, things you may have heard of eGPS, preparing for the future with other file deliveries, automotive applications, mobile reception, those types of things. So there's the preparing for the future, preparing for when we have scale on not just reception but distribution, and there's enabling ATSC 3.0 for us today in the US. And I'm not sure if somebody's sharing something, but so on the you know, execute today on the deploy, it's really about deployments. It's about getting the transmitters up. It's about getting these markets transitioned, the channel sharing agreements that are in place to enable you know, the sharing of the spectrum for us, and that goes in and getting the first pieces of the fundamental, the foundational capabilities in place around our broadcast applications, around emergency alerting, around more of the fundamental content access, the expansion of and I guess combination of our OTT and OTA applications. So it's really, to us, it's about sort of seeding the ecosystem, and while we wait for the scale, as you saw in Madeleine's presentation, the adoption of the TVs. And it's really important to us that we focus on that user adoption. How does it, you know, how are we improving the user experience for the consumers?
Thank you. And now with Fincons, we have a company with us that's active in both markets, in the EU and in the US. So that'll be interesting to see their overview, conclusions, and experiences. And Francesco, you're probably the best person to tell us about these experiences, because you've made them all. You're making them while we're talking. So it's innovation that's driving, I think, your engagement in both the US and in Europe. Can't you tell us more about this hybrid NextGen TV approach you're having? Because that is kind of a platform that combines both systems, I think.
Sure. Thanks, Jörn. It's a pleasure to give a sight of where we're coming from on this perspective of hybrid TV or NextGen TV, how we like to call it. So, and Jörn, you used the exact word, which was innovation. So as an IT company, we are investing heavily on innovation. And we discover, I would say, far behind lots of years ago, like 8 years ago, which in technology is really an era. In Europe, this emerging technology, HbbTV, thanks to some funded innovation program with United Europe, where we were awarded with some of our customers and with other partners, where we started testing a little bit the potential that this technology may enable broadcaster to in really early stage. So this was very well received from our partner in the consortium, like broadcasters, that from these initial POCs and MVPs, pretty soon those broadcasters launched actual implementation programs. And guess what? We were awarded about this program. So we have been exposed since the beginning, for sure in Italy, and then even in other countries in Europe, like France, to really creating a platform to enable audience interaction with HbbTV. And starting in US 4 years ago, as part of our internationalization program, we discovered, and we were happy to discover that this was a really hot topic as well, who was just about to start. And this was pretty interesting for us because gave us the chance to came in US with a USP, pretty clear and pretty well identified. So participating to those interops that Sam was mentioning earlier gave us exactly the opportunity to produce the business benefit of rolling out strategy of adopting the potential of audience interaction brought from ATSC. That at that stage was really, as Mike said, very heavily focused on the infrastructures and not yet interested in discovering the potential of audience interaction, which is serving both the content side, so verticalizing the content fruition from a user perspective, but also most definitely the targeted advertising, which is a great angle also to tackle with the adoption of this technology standard.
Yes, and now over to you. Thank you, Francesco, to you, Oliver, because I think you can tell us a bit more in depth about the most recent hybrid NextGen TV experiences that Fincons has made.
Yes, thanks a lot, Jörn. Well, I would mention both European and US because I think that this part is getting very, very interesting. And well, among the European HbbTV applications we put in production, I think I would certainly mention Mediaset in Italy and the Tier 1 broadcaster in France. The former started in 2017 a process of hybrid TV launch and continuous evolution, exploring and actually testing live the market feedback about user interactivity and content personalization, so proposing functionalities such as start over, highlights, multi-camera, as also new advertising models such as interactive and targeted advertising with multi-channel advertising and attribution, and more recently even HbbTV TA trials. The Tier 1 French broadcaster on the other side we are working with prepared the basis for a visionary adoption strategy, in my opinion, starting from GDPR compliance as a foundation, covering live audience paradigms, live audience management, and advanced advertising models, as also some content-related convergence paradigms, being now ready to catch the opportunities of the French market move, which we are monitoring. On the US side, vice versa, we have been involved in the implementation of pioneer ATSC 3 applications, as Sam well reported before, together with the NAB, and the first demonstrative ATSC broadcaster app, the CBS pilot that Sam mentioned to test the click and buy commerce opportunities, the news literacy app with EW scripts, the remote schooling app for the Howard University Middle School, up to the production-ready application for Univision, which was one of the first production launches in this market. But regarding the news literacy app in particular, was aim is to help the citizens recognize and dismiss misinformation. I would propose to watch a short video clip which highlights potential that I think would be of great interest also in Europe. So, Jörn, if you wanted to launch it, let's see this video clip.
Let's take a look at the video, which should play right now.
Tonight, Scripps is going in-depth on your news literacy. We're investigating why false information travels so quickly on social media and what you can do about it. And we want to know, have you recently seen a news story that wasn't real? You can answer our interactive poll question here in the corner of the screen with your NextGen TV remote. The results will pop up in 15 seconds. And throughout the story, keep an eye on the interactive features coming on the screen, from quizzes to additional information to help your news literacy skills.
So let's take a look at a couple of examples on social media, and we invite you to participate in this news literacy quiz. Let's get started. This is a tweet from January 5th, the day before the Capitol riots. The picture in the tweet shows an enormous crowd in Washington, D.C., and implies this is the crowd rallying ahead of the Save America March. Is this true or false? Well, grab your NextGen television remote and click on the Scripps logo in the bottom right corner of your screen if you'd like to participate. This will open our polling station and offer you the ability to vote true or false on these social media posts. We will share the results as they come in. So what did you choose? This is false. The photo was taken from the 2018 March for Our Lives protest in support of greater gun control.
Simply browsing this carousel, we can find lots of useful tips made available by professional journalists. By clicking on the carousel, this L-shaped section opens, and I can select the content I'm more interested in. For example, Where on Earth is very useful, as it explains how to use online tools to check where a certain picture was actually taken.
There is so much more to this than
Or,
we can cover in these
this other
stories.
tip, sanitize before you share, reminds us to always verify content before sharing it with our network, explaining how to do it.
People are seeking out news that matches their opinions.
Interesting examples that we've just seen here, and I'd now like to continue with Sam in the second round of questions. As you know, let's try to focus on a sustainable model. Is there an ATSC 3 application you would like to mention which promises to be a good example of potentially being a new revenue generator? Because obviously monetization is a very important aspect.
Yeah, of course. And so I'm going to go back a little bit. When we made the switch to analog to digital, I was working at Capital Broadcasting Company, and our CEO was very adamant that, you know, HbbTV was really going to be the driver because of the quality of the video that it presented, and I think he proved to be right. HbbTV was the real leap forward. I think now, while we are going to have the ability to do Ultra HD, and that's important, I think one of the really big differentiators is going to be these types of applications. And so just that increased engagement, I think, is going to be very important to the way, you know, our media companies operate. And so in that context, they already have websites and mobile apps, and this is really going to be able to bring it together in a NextGen TV experience. And from a monetization standpoint, because you're so right, you have to be able to make money doing this, and under our models. And so I really like the CEST application in that, because when we sat down with CBS, they were very intentional that, like, yes, we want to do an app, but we want to do an app that we can help educate folks within CBS about, no, this can improve our business. And so when you look at all of the elements in that carousel, one of them offered the ability for people to buy the recipes. So it linked in with Amazon and instant delivery, and you could get all of the ingredients from that recipe delivered to your house. Another one of those offered the ability to buy a book, and the books came from a sister division of CBS that was under the same sort of parent company. You could also increase engagement by browsing other episodes of that segment, and that produced additional advertising opportunities that were actually targeted advertising opportunities. And then, of course, the ability to share content with others. All of those things drive more viewership, more engagement, and provide a better user experience, which is going to, sort of create that virtuous cycle that drives revenue in a number of different ways. And so, that to me is probably the ones that we've done thus far. And I again say Fincons did a fabulous job in sort of taking CBS's vision and then converting that into reality.
I think that's really what makes it interesting for broadcasters and also operators to enable these additional revenue generating applications. Of course, most of them kind of,
yes,
bridging broadcast and internet-based services and solutions, and that way, merchandising and everything, commercial applications, you can start generating revenues, or at least offering the opportunity for these monetization options. Talking about applications, Mike, I'd like to ask you, is there sort of a #1 application in ATSC that you'd like to highlight?
Well, I don't think that there's, I'll say I don't think there's a single, main application that really is driving us. I think first off, though, I agree completely with Sam. Look, the viewer experience is probably the most important thing that we focus on right now. And I know it's not a business model, so maybe we don't talk about it as often, about how important it is to engage with the viewer and improve that experience so that we get to our business models in the end, right? But we need to build that ecosystem, and I think the exciting things for us are building the ecosystem around data distribution and around dynamic advertising. Targeted advertising, dynamic ad insertion, however, whatever terms you want to use for it. But we're building that, we are building the fundamental components of that ecosystem today. It doesn't, a lot of it relies on the same infrastructure that it takes to do a broadcast application deployment over the air. A lot of it is about signaling and having the right, these are common things that we deal with in the broadcast industry outside of 3.0, right? What are the right methods for signaling, for targeted ad insertion? What are the right methods for, for getting the content down to the viewer? And so really for us, I think those two applications and building that ecosystem, because it's not just the broadcast application, right? We need that control layer. We need to be able to signal in that ecosystem. We need to be able to control the broadcast applications. We need to be able to incorporate other pieces of content. And so it's the amalgamation of all of those components that is really, I guess, the work that we're doing and what makes, what's going to make this worthwhile in the end to create that business model around those two, around dynamic ad insertion, around data distribution, is build the ecosystem and then enable these features.
Interesting to see this dynamic advertising solutions, and of course ad replacement and everything that you're experimenting with. That is something that's mirrored in Europe with the HbbTV TA, targeted advertising specification, that's just been released, and where we will see the first real applications being launched shortly. And so obviously both markets here have something in common. And once again, I can only say this is really, I think, a great way for the classic broadcasters to generate advertising income from markets where you would have long thought they're all lost to, you know, the global internet champions of this world, because they're not actually. And this opens up new opportunities for broadcasters to tap into those areas with targeted advertising, addressable TV, and all these things. And to also open the doors to new advertisers, I think, to new clients who previously thought the television market is not something for us. We just want to target specific groups, specific regions, local elements involved, and this can now all be done. And I think that's really a great way to show the potential of these advanced solutions that we're talking about today. Francesco, over to you again. Let's talk about the future of hybrid TV. Which are your priorities as an early moving supplier active in both continents?
So our priorities are, of course, coming from our customers' priority, and also coming from what's our point of observation of the trend in the industry, right? Because yes, we are supporting some of the big players, let's say in Europe and in US, to launch new models, but we are speaking with essentially a lot of others. And what we really see is a major focus really on how to increase monetization, and that was the term you also use, Jörn, and is really at the focus of the attention right now. So yeah, in all this instance, right? So the substitution and targeted advertising, of course, is the first level of implementing it, and with the TA that will be much more easier. I have to say we have been launching our own product on this even before the TA, and this gave us the opportunity to play with a lot of synchronization mechanisms and testing really the business model that is generating a lot of interest in terms of the sales house, in terms of even the brands, to differentiate the communication strategy. But let's say the idea, really, in my opinion, to focus on, to really leverage 100% of the opportunity generated by hybrid or NextGen TV, is really thinking at it as a pure way to execute the real convergence between broadcast and broadband. And on this idea, I see already US is really keeping up real quick in terms of launching the unified model of engagement for broadcasters to really compete with pure digital players. And this is really what, yes, with Mediaset we have been doing so far, and what we have launched together one month ago. So launching their monetization as SVOD services, which is integrated with an HbbTV app, and essentially the audience can buy premium content on the digital platform and have a fruition of those on the big screen, with all the advertising focus leveraging from the broadcaster perspective. And this is also made possible thanks to a real data strategy, right, which has to be implemented, adopting all the privacy rules, I mean, everywhere. Of course, Europe is very strict with GDPR, and I have to say that our solution here is very innovative, because can allow the usage even of non-consent data to drive the monetization through advertisement. So I think this is really the focus for the near term.
Thank you. And I think, Oliver, let's stay with the business models and applications. Which new business models and applications do you detect both in Europe and in the US? Because that is obviously a very key aspect to everyone using those new specifications.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that regarding Europe, we find examples of, I think, mature and sustainable models already. The one that Francesco just mentioned, Mediaset Infinity, which I think is a good example. I think it represents what we can call a 360-degree TV model. So combining in a real synergic way the linear free-to-air core offering with the premium OTT VOD service, which is named Infinity Plus, and the free OTT one, which is named Mediaset Play. The goal of this combined approach is to leverage the different channels of the group all together to better reach and personalize the offering in terms of content, advertising, and even pricing. So on one side, for example, the free-to-air horizontal offering reaches the widest audience and can promote premium services, which instead, the premium services address the demand of verticality. On the other side, the free-to-air user experience has been already enriched by the addition of the HbbTV interactivity layer. And the latter is also an opportunity for the user to discover the VOD offering for free, have a taste of it, and maybe decide to fully exploit its capabilities subscribing to the premium service. In addition, the premium model is moving from the concept of bundle, we are used to this concept, to the concept of promotion. So the more you consume, the less you pay. Worth to mention is also the pricing model flexibility of the premium offering, which proposes different mixes of pay and advertising. So regarding the US market, instead, I think that this market is bringing in some fresh air, some good fresh air regarding the different type of NextGen TV applications, starting, of course, with the monetization and entertainment focus initially, but also expanding to really new services to the citizen, which may represent an incredibly effective scaling factor for the whole ecosystem. As we have seen today, we go from hyperlocal news to education, to weather forecasting, emergency alerting was mentioned, and many more to come. These are not directly monetization-driven apps, but they are helping to expand the adoption to make monetization consistent and significant. So I think that both on the two sides of the ocean these are both presenting intriguing advancements.
Let's continue to look at those two sides of the ocean with ATSC and HbbTV. Madeleine, you've already mentioned in your presentation a few areas of collaboration where you see that those could be really beneficial to all parties involved. Maybe you could just quickly highlight them again for us to have a clear picture again about these areas where you think that collaboration would really be a key benefit to everyone involved in these specifications.
Yeah, thanks, Jörn. I think there's two areas of collaboration that we can think about. One is, what is the user experience and how can we share our understanding of the killer app, if you will, what's being successful in Europe, what's being successful in the US, and how can we adopt those user experiences across the oceans. That's one piece, and some of that can be the user experience itself. You know, the shopping app was a big hit, and perhaps that's something that European audiences might also enjoy. Or catch-up TV has been a big hit, and so that's something that American audiences would probably enjoy. So that sort of thing. But also, I think, you know, where we're talking about monetization, you know, things need to work for the entire ecosystem, which includes the audience, and it also includes the broadcasters and the technology vendors. So you think about the monetization piece, and if we see what's happening in Europe, where targeted advertising, particular models are working well, checks are being written, and it's all good, then I could see that kind of learning definitely crossing the pond. The other area, though, is on the technical side. How can we work together on the technical side to get as close to convergence as makes the most sense? And, you know, I think about a couple of different paths forward. Certainly ATSC and HbbTV are moving forward as standards development organizations. One of the things that's exciting about interactivity is that it really needs to move at the speed of the internet, which means that new APIs are going to be consistently and constantly developed to do new things that audiences are appreciating and that broadcasters are making money at, so to speak. So how do we develop those new APIs? So right now, as I mentioned, each organization has a different technical path for developing an API. On the side of HbbTV, there's some modification to the browser specification. On the side of ATSC, there's the addition of WebSocket APIs. Well, what if there's a new API, a new function, feature that we both technically want to include, and instead of each doing it a different way, maybe these new features are opportunities to do technical work together. The other possibility would be that if we have some APIs that each of us have developed in a different technical way that essentially do the same thing, another possibility would be to work together in the W3C. to make these kinds of APIs now part of the browser specification, rather than having HbbTV or ATSC or HybridCast or any of the others have to kind of create it themselves, but rather bring these things into the W3C and again have a larger common framework that we're all drawing from. Whether these kinds of paths will bear fruit, I'm not sure. It's kind of up to the membership of the respective organizations, but from the point of view of the ATSC members, they are definitely interested in opportunities for convergence as they arise. And I guess it's up to the leadership of the organizations to kind of put our heads together and try to understand what each other's goals are and how can we kind of try to achieve those goals in the same way as much as possible. So these are the opportunities that I see, and we'll see what the future brings.
Thank you. Very interesting thoughts here, and I'm sure that among the audience of this session, we have exactly those people that you've just been addressing. And so let's see what will happen in the next couple of months. It's time now for the Q&A. We've got a couple of questions. Let me see if I can show them to you here, and we can have a look at them and see whether we have enough time to address all of them. Whoever likes to respond, please do so. Amongst, that's the first question, all the apps, which is the most popular app and generates the highest traffic? Maybe Mike, I don't know.
No, we only have a single application out there right now, so that's
okay.
It's a tough question to answer. I mean, there's there's one application, I think, but I mean, the thing is, we're demonstrating capabilities. We're building upon that. We're still learning at this point. We're still improving the viewer experience. So I think a lot of the examples that Sam showed and Oliver showed are really good examples of directions that we would head.
Sam, anything to add?
Yeah, I would just remind folks again that, the slides that I shared of apps that have been developed, they are prototype apps that have been used in interop type environments and demonstration type environments. And, as Madeleine was pointing out, we're still in the midst and the early days of rolling out. We've got 20+ markets on the air now, with many more scheduled for the rest of this year and next and beyond. But right now, we haven't had a chance to deploy a large number of apps. So I can tell you from the demonstrations that, it sort of depends on, what you're into. I mean, there's been a lot of positive response to the news apps. There's been a lot of positive response to the sports apps. There's been, good feedback on these. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity here, but we'll have to see how it actually plays out.
Exactly.
If I may pile on,
sure.
I think that this is an area where folks in the U.S. can learn a lot from folks in Europe, because where the U.S. is, as Mike and Sam just said, we're just toeing in the water. We got prototypes. We got one app. We don't know yet what's going to be the most popular app. However, HbbTV has a great track record in Europe, and obviously different cultures have different, audiences have different, tastes. But nonetheless, there's no reason why many of the things that have been successful in Europe couldn't necessarily be ported over to US audiences. So that first bullet point is one of the areas where I think the most opportunity exists for collaboration and collective understanding between these groups about how we can move forward in the most exciting way for the viewers.
Absolutely, great way to learn from each other. I think I'll
Jörn,
stay with.
I can add some ideas from the European mature launches.
Sure.
So for we don't have statistics, but I think we can say that still the adoption is linked to the TV format. So it's TV format driven. So for example, during the FIFA World Cup in 2018, the availability of near real-time highlights of a football match during the live, thanks to the HbbTV button, was for sure an intriguing functionality which created peaks of access, even if at that time the number were still small. But also other format like the Celebrity Big Brother were stimulating some new interactive functionalities that have been introduced at that time and so on. So the TV format combined with the functionality really can be a driver of the usage, of the actual usage.
Next question addresses subscription-based services using ATSC 3. Are there some use examples? Maybe you, Madeleine, you've got the best overview. Is that possible?
Sure. Certainly ATSC 3.0 has a digital rights management system. It's, again, based on W3C type technologies. It's the Common Encryption Protocol, CENC. And most of the implementations in the world, in the US today, are based on a wideband wideband product, which is designed for one-way as well as two-way communications. So thinking about example use cases, certainly with the ability to encrypt the content, we have the opportunity to have subscription content. We have the opportunity to also have subscription upgrades of the content quality. So for example, using scalable video coding, you could potentially have one type of resolution available for free and an enhancement layer that brings the thing up to 4K or someday even 8K for premium. So for example, an HD SDR could be available to everybody for free, and then the UHD HDR wide color gamut high frame rate version could be available for premium, and some people would want to buy that. But I think, as Mike has pointed out a number of times, there's a little bit of walk, crawl, run type of thing going on. And I think the most important thing in the US right now is to make sure that the basic Watch TV experience is absolutely terrific with NextGen TV, so that people who get a NextGen TV and are in one of these 62 markets look at the content and say, this is amazing, and go and tell their friends. And this kind of gets into one of the other questions that are on the screen here. How do you get people excited and want to buy televisions? The answer is you knock it out of the park on day one with great content, great looking content, and great content, which can include enhanced video, it can include enhanced audio, and it can include these interactive apps, all of which we hope the consumers will get very excited about. So in terms of subscription services, I think that's something that the standard certainly supports, and I think that broadcasters may be looking at that down the road as a monetization opportunity. But I think that in the early days, the best thing we can do is to make sure that everything that they expect to be free is absolutely there, it is free, and it is absolutely terrific.
Very good to see all these different capabilities and aspects being included. I think the next question is clear that this can all be rolled out on satellite cable IP infrastructures, depending on the requirements of the broadcaster and operator. DRM we've already addressed is possible, and maybe companion devices is something to quickly address because we only have 3 minutes left. Who'd like to respond on the question whether ATSC 3.0 works on companion devices?
Well, maybe I can just bang that one off so that people can move on to the next one, which is, so ATSC does have a companion device specification. It's A338, and it describes how you can connect your companion device with your primary device and the types of messages that can go back and forth. So short answer is yes, A338, it's on the website.
Okay,
and
maybe
there was an example, the application we did with CBS for CBS with NAB, and some mentioned that already integrated in the pilot, the mobile as a companion device. We also did the second step, which was integrating voice control, and everything was used to order, for example, the received ingredients on Amazon Fresh, as Sam anticipated.
Okay.
So yes, we tested it.
Actually, we tested it on a POC of a betting app or a gaming app, where we are pairing a mobile device to the TV. And actually the mobile device is acting as a first screen for, to avoid that maybe some kids can access the TV with the remote and place, huge bets. However, this is working and it's pretty straightforward.
Last question, maybe one for you, Oliver, because you're active in the machine room, you know about what's possible and what creates most interest. So what do you think is going to be, well, the key point to drive adoption of this technology for users, and what will make consumers purchase an ATSC capable TV or converter? What is the killer app?
I think that we mentioned that there are a number of new services to the citizen that are key to extend the customer bases. But I will take the opportunity to answer something that we didn't mention, but we all have in mind, which is, and it is an answer to the first question also, which is sport gamification and betting. That we all, it will be a driver for the audience to jump on this train quickly, because sport is fascinating in any country, in any region, and the possibility to gamify the sport is absolutely a trend and a trigger.
Thank you. So there are several killer apps, and they are the usual suspects. Thank you very much for the presentation, Madeleine. Thank you to the panelists for the round table. Thanks to you for watching this webinar and submitting your questions. And I'd like to remind you, of course, that we have a great event coming up for you in November, which is also a great opportunity to interact with each other from all sides of all parts of the world. The HbbTV Symposium and Awards taking place on November the 25th and 26th in Paris, and you're all invited to join us there. And I'd also like to invite you to the next webinar in July, where we'll look at ratings and analytics tools and other solutions for local and smaller broadcasters. You'll be receiving invitations for this event, and you'll also be receiving the links to download the PDF presentation for Madeleine and the recording of this webinar on YouTube. In case you want to see it again or have missed out on parts or want to recommend it to anyone else, please do so. You'll receive the link. And also, we are, as usual, open to suggestions for further webinar topics. Please send them to webinar@hbbtv.org. HbbTV is also available on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and that is also a great way to interact with everyone involved in these communities. And yes, the last thing I'd like to mention is that there'll be a small survey coming up as usual at the end of this webinar, so you can rate this webinar and we can improve the future sessions. Thanks once again to all of you. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.